suspension, specifically shock rebuilds. I do most of the other work on my bike all the way up to a top end, but for whatever reason, shocks and suspension seem like a dark art. The valving still does, but I wanted to do full rebuilds. I wanted to be able to change the fluid and charge it with nitrogen. So digging into it, it didn't seem to be as daunting as I initially thought. So in this video, I'm going to show you what I have bought, the specialty tools, and what it takes for a basic home mechanic like myself to get it done. I'm sure some suspension experts are going to be cringing, but this is what I've got to get the job done, kind of with the minimal amount of tools, also assuming you have regular tools like sockets and wrenches, also assuming you know how to take one of these out. So let's take a look at what we need. We'll start off with the scary one that eludes most people, nitrogen. I was able to buy this tank off of Facebook Marketplace for $100, and it's pretty big. That's about 4 feet big. There's a picture of it beside the bike. And it's full of nitrogen. That could probably do, I don't know, let's say millions of shocks. So about $100 for that. But prices obviously vary, and to get them refilled, you go to your local welding shop. The next unusual bit of kit you'll need is a regulator. You're going to be putting 150 PSI or 145 roughly into the shock. So you need a regulator capable of that. Also, you'll need an adapter that goes to a needle, and that's how you're going to charge the shock. More about that later for the other half of it. But I got this kit on eBay. I believe it was $150.
This is a bleeding cup by DRC. This gets the air out of your shock in lieu of having a large, expensive vacuum system. I believe it was $70. This small Racetech item replaces this. What happens is that with the more complicated charging systems, it's a large piece that goes on here to charge your reservoir with nitrogen. With this, there's actually a small orifice in there that you can pierce with a needle that comes in the kit to charge it with nitrogen. So all you have to do is swap this bolt out. This is a Tusk bullet. It goes on the, I guess, shaft of the shock. Just allows you to slide the seals on easier. Not completely necessary, but I picked it up anyway. You could probably use electrical tape or something just to slide the seal on a little easier. And lastly, at least you're going to need an oil seal, depending on what you're going to be replacing in your shock. I just have the oil seal here. There could be some other things that I'm going to replace, but we'll encounter that when we crack it open. Lastly, here's the optional bit. I picked up this WP bladder kit. It was a good deal, so I thought I'd throw it in. Nice packaging, by the way. So the bladder, instead of a piston, you know, is supposed to go up and down easier. The advantage of it is, I guess, less stiction on the reservoir. The disadvantage is nitrogen can leak through this over time, and you have to service the shock at a regular interval. A nice looking bit of kit. And that was an extra $120, so a pretty good deal for this. So there you have it. There's all the specialty items that I bought. It totaled $413, including the nitrogen. Obviously, I got that off of Marketplace. That price will vary depending on what you're getting. But assuming you have regular shop tools, this is all you're going to need. I'll put what you need and the links to it all and the price in the description if you want to pick up the same stuff. All right, first step, we want to know where our clickers are. So we'll go all the way clockwise, make a note of that, and then bring them all the way out counterclockwise. Next, you're going to want to measure your spring so you can put it back in the same spot when you're finished. Next up, we're going to let some nitrogen out just to make everything easier. Let the air escape slowly. Now we're going to take the spring off. A lot of the time you can do this by hand. You don't need the hook tool. And there it goes. Pop down the ring and remove that. And off goes the spring. Now, we'll give everything a good cleaning.
Okay, now we're going to release some of the oil. You can give it a bit of a wiggle to get out a little excess. So I got a flat end punch. Just going to take off the locking cap now. Give this a bit of a cleaning before we pop it open. And now for easier access, I'm just going to hold this up with a reusable zip tie. Now there is a special tool to push this down, which you need to do to access the locking ring. I didn't get that tool. I thought maybe I could do it with something else. So I'm going to try with these two punches. There we go. And now you want to pop out the locking ring. They do sell a pick tool that looks a lot like this if you don't want to take a flat-headed screwdriver and, you know, kind of take off the sharp edges and bend it up slightly. I'm going to be using this tool to take out the seals after too. That's what you get for riding in a lot of mud. So this can be a bit of a messy part. I'm going to pull the shaft out and try to put some of the excess fluid in there. Whoa! There we go. There it goes. Now I got a 19 mil. I'm going to remove this up top to access the shim stack and then eventually the seals. Now, a trick I was told to avoid losing all the shims and getting them out of order is just put a suitable screwdriver or something this size on the top and then push the entire stack up onto it, like so. And then just set the entire thing aside. That way you won't lose it. And then we'll remove the rest of the pieces and give those all a good cleaning. Time to inspect and disassemble the seal ring retainer. First, you pop the spring out. Then you're going to want to remove the centering disc and then remove your actual seal. And they all look to be in pretty good shape, but I am going to replace the oil seal. So we'll give that all a cleaning and reassemble. Make sure it's nice and lubricated before it goes in. The direction you want to put it in, you can see there's a small groove in the center of this O-ring. That side faces up. Pop that in first. Then in goes the centering, oh, the other way, of course. The centering piece. Then your rubber stopper, whatever you want to call this thing. Like so. And then the spring, and that will sort of click into place. Like that. In the center. There's the click. And that's reassembled, ready to go back on the bike. Everything else looks good. I mean, obviously you could service a lot of these parts, but they look fine. I thought I would just do the main seal. Of course, the other thing you want to clean is the shaft. Make sure that there's no nicks or scratches on it. Give it a good inspection. Also, there's some red Loctite on here. I used a wire brush to sort of scrape that off. Now back at the shock body, I'm going to take this adjuster ring right off and give that a good cleaning. All right, I got the shaft back on. Now I'm going to put my bullet tool here to not scrape any pieces. Slide these back on. You actually need it for a little smoother going through that area. Next, we're going to put a dab of Loctite on the threads. Pop this on. And we're going to torque that down to 29 Newton meters or 40 foot-pounds of torque. Now we have a slight variation for the type of service I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be adding a bladder. This is the regular stock piston. So the difference in doing so is with the stock piston, you're going to need to use the needle to charge it with nitrogen. off of the Schrader, the no-loss Schrader chuck here. With the bladder kit, it comes with just a Schrader valve on the end, so I will be skipping that step. Also, you need to measure the piston depth when you're using the stock reservoir. In order to do that, find something suitable that you can poke in with a little O-ring on it. So what you would do is you'd push this all the way in, as far as it'll go. Then you'd measure that distance with micrometers. Once you fill the entire shock up with fluid and extend the shaft all the way out, you would then take another measurement before you put the nitrogen in, and you'd want the measurement to be 5 millimeters less. So say about there. When you install a bladder, you can skip that step. Of course, in order to get this off, you need a special tool that fits right here to pop it off, or you can use a, I guess, belt wrench and a little bit of heat to take it off. The reason I'm going with a bladder is it was a good deal. Also, it's supposed to give you a bit more performance. I guarantee I won't notice the difference because the bladder, unlike the piston, is easily pushed up and down, I suppose. It needs a little more force. But we'll see if I ever notice a difference. One other quick tip is if you're gonna use the regular piston and do the regular service that way, and you can't find an O-ring this size, well, if you buy this nitrogen assembly from Racetech, that's actually the O-ring that is on here. So you can pop that onto something like this, or, you know, a skinny screwdriver and be able to find that correct depth. So this part you can skip if you're not doing a bladder conversion. First step, we're gonna add a little Loctite to the seal here. Hand tighten that on to begin with. Next up, we'll lubricate the bladder and pour a little shock fluid in the reservoir. And that'll drop right in. And then we'll secure it with the clip. Now we'll add a little shock fluid into here. Lubricate the sides. Again, if you need a little help and you don't have the tool, I'm just using these punches. There we have it. And in goes this clip. Next up, we'll remove the adjuster. And this is where you should have the right tool, but I do not. So I'm going to use this large crescent wrench. Okay, with the compression adjuster out, we'll give that an inspection and a cleaning. For now, we'll set it aside. This is where the first part of the bleeding comes in. Pull the shaft all the way down and fill it up as much as we can. Now we'll put our hand over it and gently let a little air out. Might get a little messy here. Whoa! So this is step one of the bleeding. We'll do this a bit until we get some of the bubbles out. Then we'll continue with the bleeding cup. Once you've done that rough bleed, you can reinstall your compression adjuster with your definitely correct tool. Okay, if you want to get the right tool for the job, it's a 35 mil. Now for the proper bleeding. First, undo this and install your bleed cup. And here comes your bleed cup. Nice and snug, like so. Now here comes the bleed procedure when you don't have a vacuum bleeder. You want to fill your bleed cup, about halfway with the shock fully extended. Then slowly push up and you're going to see some bubbles start escaping. Now, this is where it takes quite a bit longer than a vacuum bleeder. You're going to keep going in and out until you don't see any more bubbles. It can take, I would say on average, 15 to 20 up and downs. All right, I think that's all the bubbles. air bubbles are out. Now I've leveled this off. What I'm going to do is create a bit of a mess, but I do have a syringe here, so I'm going to suck out some of the oil from here. Then I'm going to delicately undo this. And that's totally full to the brim there, so it's not like it's going anywhere. It's just going to spill out a little. And then we'll be on to charging with some nitrogen. So this is the moment, if I had the regular piston, I would push it up and make a note of the 5 mil difference with the O-ring and with the shaft all the way down. Since I don't have to do that with the bladder kit, I'm just going to add nitrogen now. And if I had the regular piston, I would have that Race Tech piece in and use the needle adapter onto this chuck. But instead, I'll just thread this on and put in 145 PSI into the bladder. So you're going to turn that in, let it sit for about 15 seconds. Then out it goes. Since my nitrogen setup is pretty basic, I don't have a very accurate gauge. I've attached my shock pump onto the reservoir. What I'm going to do is just hit the release button here. I've intentionally gone a little higher than 145, so I'm just going to let out a bit and try to nail 145 exactly. Okay, what's 1 PSI between friends? Oh wait, look, it evened out, 145. All right, I'll undo this. You'll hear a hissing, but that's just the nitrogen in here. Now what you want to do is press down on the shock. I have it on the ground here because it's obviously full of nitrogen. It's going to be hard to do. You want to press down and allow it to come back up. Now there should be no notchiness. It shouldn't jump. It should be a nice smooth action. So let's see how it did. And that looks good. Your adjuster. Yes, it will fit. And pop that in. Now we'll tighten this up. Now a small mistake that I just did is I had this flipped around the other way. When it's on the bike, you're gonna want your tightening point here for easier access. Now you're gonna measure and adjust your spring to where your sag was before. And that's where I needed it to be. Tighten up your retaining collar, I guess it's called. Then put your clickers back to where they were. Now, there's only one more thing to do. Okay, now that that's all done, I have one more extremely important thing to do. I have to put on this WP sticker. Okay. Oh, very stressful. All right, that's it. Hope that was helpful. This is what worked for me. So if you're some kind of suspension guru and you know a better way to do it with simple tools, yeah, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you next time. All right, one more thing. I've been on the trail for a few hours now, and everything feels good, so I didn't screw anything up. As for the bladder, maybe it's a bit of a placebo effect because I know I put it in, but it feels a little better. When going over a sharp rock or a larger log, even if I'm off throttle, it doesn't tend to kick me up as much. The back end doesn't kick up as much. Again, that just might be because I know I put it in, but it's definitely a positive. Is it any kind of major change? No, but it's definitely gonna make service from now on a little easier just with the Schrader valve right there. All right, that's it.